Hi everybody, I want to welcome George Paris, ex-professional footballer and now counsellor with Break Even, a treatment provider for anybody affected by problem gambling. And welcome to our first podcast in a series of podcasts we're going to be doing over the next few months. So morning George.
Morning Ian.
I'd like to start, George, can we talk a little bit about your football career, which I know started at West Ham, and tell me how that all happened.
I got invited to come and train at West Ham when I was 12. So back then I played for my district side, Redbridge, and my county, Essex. I was invited, and we used to train on a Tuesday and Thursday evening. And back in those days, we only used to play games against other clubs on a school holidays. So that's when I first went to West Ham, and then it just progressed from there through the age groups. And then, lucky enough, I was offered an apprenticeship when I left school at 16, having played previous season I played for England schoolboys under 15. Oh, wow. So back then I was an attacking midfield player with scoring lots of goals. So I'm not sure what happened later in my career, but that's where I was when I first came to the club. And within a year, when I got to 17, I signed my first pro contract.
Well, how long did your career last at West Ham?
So I left West Ham in 1993, so I was lucky enough to be granted a testimonial for 10 years service at the club. So that was obviously a fantastic achievement, but as and when I think I had just moved to Birmingham when I had my testimonial games.
And at the time that's quite a large transfer fee when you went to Birmingham, wasn't it?
Yeah, I think so. I think it was about £150,000, so that was a lot of money back then, not so much now.
Yeah.
But, yeah.
And throughout your career, you went on some loan signings at Brentford, Bristol, Brighton in particular?
That's correct, yeah. So in my second year at Birmingham City, I got loaned out to various clubs, like you said there, and I was obviously quite lucky to play all those other clubs and games, so I kept myself fit and, true.
So obviously, Break Even's about, looking after people with problem gambling, and you've got your own story. During your professional career, when you got injuries, did you turn to gambling more then, or when did you really start gambling, I suppose I'm asking?
So I suppose I really turned to gambling quite a young age. I mean, even when we used to have sleepovers with my school friends, sort of like 8, 9, 10, that sort of age group, we always used to play cards. Back then it was for pennies and 5p's, and also because of the culture that I grew up with, the West Indian culture, that we always used to, I can always remember having friends, or my mum had friends around with dominoes and cards, so it was always there, although obviously my brothers and sisters never had a problem with gambling. But even in my football career, when we used to go on youth tours, and even when I made the first team, we always used to play cards on the coach. So it was
quite normalised.
It was quite normalised. Yeah, that was the environment that we were in. So it was always there.
Yeah.
And for me, I suppose obviously I just took it a little bit too far, whereas most of my teammates were able to back it and that be it.
You mentioned your West Indian culture. How difficult was it for you growing up as a black footballer in those times?
I suppose it was only when I went to secondary school, and that's where it first raised its head, as in someone saying someone called me a black bee, whatever.
Yeah.
So that I went home, and obviously my mum explained what that meant as such. And then in the football context, I suppose it only raised its head when we used to go away games. And that was all over the country, I suppose, and just different clubs for various reasons. And that was their way of trying to upset me, and it didn't work, I don't think.
No, good. So that didn't affect your performance. Once you started gambling when you were playing, do you feel that ever affected your performance on the pitch?
That's an interesting one, because I suppose if you were to ask some of the supporters with some games, they may say, "Oh, what was I doing in that particular game," etc. But I think for me, it was, if I'll be honest, it was later on in my footballing career where I was actually possibly more concerned with gambling side of things as opposed to actually playing the game of football. Right. So the football match got in the way of my time gambling.
So that must have been quite hard hiding that, because there you were on the pitch giving your all supposedly, but maybe more worried about who was going to win the 330.
Yeah, very much so. Yes, yeah. So yeah, that was a straight. It's only now when I reflect on that was what I think.
Did anyone know about your tendency to gamble, or your problem, your manager or teammates?
Well, my teammates knew that I gambled, because obviously, as I say, with that culture.
Yeah.
But I showed, and they never knew that I had the problem that I did. So that's the issue with it, isn't it? It's quite a silent addiction as such. The first time I had to go to a manager and say I had a problem was when I was at Brighton. So that was 96. Back then I didn't really know too much about it. I just said I'd had a problem, but to say there wasn't the support that there is now. So
when you went to the manager, it was sort of
well, it was there was an acknowledgement, but okay,
but nothing.
Just get on and play.
Well, the one thing for sure that's changed though, isn't it? Because I think when you realised you had a problem and you reached out for help, where did you go initially for that?
So initially I went to GA, which I did for a few years, and then I also sought some help with Sporting Child's Clinic, which was run by Tony Adams and Peter Kay, who was there. Not the comedian Peter Kay, by the way, I should add.
Yeah.
So at the time, the talk about Tony, it was quite interesting that most afternoons when I lived in Emerson Park, we would cross each other in the street.
Right.
Unbeknown to me at the time, he had a problem with his drinking, so he would go to Chequers pub, it was in Hornchurch, and I'd be going to the Ladbrokes.
Wow.
But we both didn't know that we had
neither
that.
Neither of you knew what was going on. All you knew you were both professional footballers.
And doing that, and every other, it was practically most afternoons as well.
Wow.
So.
What sort of impact, George, as you grew with your gambling addiction, and as you said, it became probably more important than football for you, what sort of impact did it have on your family?
Oh, a massive impact. As I say, when I first initially had to go to my wife and explain, she knew that I'd always gamble, but as I say, she didn't know to what extent. So I know that obviously took her very hard. She was really angry with me to start with, and naturally so. And then later on, when I then eventually had to get chucked out of the house, obviously it affected my kids, because my kids were growing up, and I wasn't around for them. So she had to explain that, and as we know, it affected others. It's not just the family members; it could be friends as well.
You mentioned affected others. Can you just explain a bit more to people that wouldn't know? What would you mean by affected others?
So affected others. So in my case, affected other was my ex-wife. Certainly my kids. It would be, I suppose, teammates, colleagues.
Yeah.
Could even be aunts and uncles, really, or even people at that stage that I'd borrowed money off of.
Sure, yeah. When your gambling, really took hold of you, as we've talked about, did you ever have any thoughts of taking your own life? Did it ever get that bad?
Only once. So that was prior to me going back home to my ex-wife, and explaining about that I'd lost all my money. So that was in '96. So I'd been to a betting shop in Newhaven. So at that stage, because I was still playing football, I had to duck and dive to go to various bookies so that people didn't know who I was with my problem. So I ended up in Newhaven, and that particular day I'd lost all my money, etc. So I had nothing there in my pocket. I just parked up, and there's like the port, Newhaven. So I was just walking up and down the bridge for, it seemed an eternity, but it might have only been 10 or 15 minutes. But that would be the closest I thought about it.
Wow. I mean, it must have been quite difficult for you in a betting shop amongst people. People know you're George Paris, a footballer. I want to talk to you about West Ham and Brighton, and then you're really worried about who's going to win a race or who's going to win this. It must have been quite difficult times for you.
Oh yeah, very difficult. Yeah, at that stage, I was, as I say, I was more interested in watching the box in the bookie. So I was more worried about my dog at Mom or whatever, or Sandown, as opposed to chatting about how West Ham, Birmingham or Brighton had got on.
There's a lot of stuff in the news presently around gambling and football in particular, and match fixing and players getting up to no good basically. What's your opinion of any players that get involved with gambling during and in football matches not supposed to, or these aspersions of match fixing? What is your personal opinion?
Yeah, I suppose it's very much a grey area, and I think with all the betting that goes on now, you can actually see possibly why and how people can do it if that's what they want to do. But everything's regulated anyway, isn't it? So even if you say, oh, you want to get booked, you've still got to physically try and get booked. And it may be that you get bought off before you get the opportunity to.
Sure,
so there's still that gamble, hence it is a gamble, isn't it?
When you were in your real trouble with gambling, did that ever cross your mind to maybe do something to get money to get out of your problem? No,
it didn't. I suppose back in them days, didn't really have those sort of bets, but it may well have done when I was at my height. That if someone had come to me and said, "Oh, actually, we want you to get booked or sent off or score an own goal," I might have done that anyway without.
It does. It sounds very difficult to prove this, and it also sounds very tempting for some people, depending on what situation they're in, to get involved in that. Can we now just look a little bit about your journey into counselling and being a treatment provider, how it actually worked for you, where you sort of went, we know you said you went to Sporting Chance. Let me just elaborate a bit more on your journey to now becoming a counsellor and helping other people at break even.
Yeah, so obviously I mentioned about Sporting Chance, so I used to go there on a regular basis and I used to see a counsellor. And I just thought actually, after I had that treatment, I just thought that was something that I could provide myself. Obviously being in that situation as well, so I just started out, and as we all do, you have to start somewhere. So that's what I did, and eventually passed my diploma in the counselling, and I now provide services for yourselves and other places. But I just thought it was a natural progression for me to try and help people or aid people, even more so obviously in the gambling sector.
That's great. One thing I wanted to ask you before was we're talking about the buzz. When people talk about their gambling, often say the buzz. For you must have had two amazing buzzes. I mean, in the day when you started walking out to Bubbles and Upton Park and thousands of people out there, how did that buzz of walking outside Upton Park to the crowds singing and cheering to the buzz of gambling? Yeah,
I think it really different, if I'll be honest. Obviously the football side of things was, that's what I worked really hard to get to that level, and when I was out there I was performing, I suppose, not just for myself but for everyone else around me, my family and even friends and even my colleagues. So that buzz was completely different to the buzz I used to get in a betting shop. That was, I don't know if it was an escape, but I didn't really need the money because I was always well paid.
So that's interesting, isn't it? Because some people just gamble to try and get money. Some people gamble what they say is a buzz. Some people just get lost in the habit of gambling. And it feels like gambling with you, it happened and you got really immersed in it.
Yeah, very much so, yeah, that'd be correct. I think I like to gamble, and then it just got all consuming, overwhelming, and before I knew it, I was back in every dog race, every horse race, every virtual horse race, whatever it may be.
And I suppose although it didn't start off about money, towards the end, when you started to lose anything, which is what culminated in you being thrown out of your marital home, then you start doing what we know as chasing. Because if you haven't got the money and you feel like you need to try and get it back, and did that happen to you?
Yeah, that happened to me very much so, and what we know from that is you try and chase it, but you never quite get there.
Absolutely. Are any of your former colleagues aware of what you do for break even now? How it's gone from poacher to gamekeeper and really helping other people? I know you said you do still in the football world at Brighton and West Ham. The people you work with, they're aware of what you do in helping other people?
Yes, they are. Yeah, I suppose that's part of the recovery as well, isn't it? For me personally, that I found the more people I could tell, then gives me less chance of going back in there again. So yeah, most people know about it, and they all support in what I'm doing, and yeah, we always have good conversations around it.
So we mentioned earlier that it's, it's a hidden addiction, it's a secret addiction, the stigma around getting help and reaching out. What would you recommend to anybody listening to this that may be struggling with a gambling addiction or know somebody that's suffering a gambling addiction? How would you think they could get in touch with, say, Break Even or organisations like us that are in the National Gambling Support Network to get help? What would your advice be to them?
I suppose first and foremost, there's so many 0800 numbers, etc. So if you're an affected other, then that could be the first port of call, just to find out, explore that. And I think obviously for a problem gambler, I suppose you hopefully get to the point when you know that you have got a problem. That I can only talk for myself, but I got to that point when every morning I woke up. One, I didn't really like myself, and two, I didn't trust myself for that day, because I knew that day I was going to go out and gamble. So luckily I reached that point when I did.
So not knowing and not trusting, not liking and not trusting yourself, for you was obviously a big sign that I need to do something about it.
Very much so for me, and as I say, obviously getting chucked out of the house as well, that was what I call my light bulb moment. Yeah.
Well, hopefully people listening to this will reach out to us or reach out to one of the organisations within the NGSN, National Gambling Support Network. Before we conclude, George, the Euros are coming up, a big event in this country. The Euros alongside the election. I think people are probably more excited about the Euros. Would that be, football's just finished. We know a lot of people gamble on football, a lot of people meet in pubs and peers, they do these sort of bets at the weekend. It's very normalised and very common thing to do. So all of a sudden all these football fans that we're going to have a rest from betting, is it sort of a trigger now to go again now the Euros are coming up?
I'm sure for majority, yes, so they might have a lull of a couple of weeks, etc. But now they must be out there looking at the teams that are in there, who's playing, looking at because you can bet on anything, can't you? So I'm sure they're looking and thinking, well, I'm going to do an accumulator or whatever it may be. So yeah, for some it's like it's just a couple of weeks off and then they'll be back in there.
George, thanks for that. The last $1 million question I've got for you: can England win the Euros?
There's no reason why not. I would tell people to go and bet on it, by the way, but certainly they've got a great chance, and hopefully if they can stay clear of injuries, there's no reason why they can't go all the way.
George, thanks for that. Thanks for being so honest, and thanks for all the work you do within Break Even and all the people you're helping to support. Thanks very much.
My pleasure. Thank you. Yeah.
If you or someone you know is affected by gambling related harm, please contact us on 01273 833 722 or visit our website www.breakeven.org.uk. Alternatively, please call the National Gambling Support Helpline on 0808 8020 133. Please make sure you like and subscribe to all our social media channels and keep this message out there. Thank you.